the question of who HNA is serving. As you may have known, HNA Group is the largest private jet service provider in China and in the world too. It owns the world's only Boeing 787 airplane, valued at several hundred million US. Flight operation cost of $74,000 per hour. HNA owns this plane, together with other Boeing 737 plane, Airbus series, and several Gulfstream airplanes. This plane, in the past few years, serving Wang Jian and his family and the people that are related to them. Names of passengers being listed here has kept a record of the total 800 flights. This Boeing 787 airplane, or this so-called private jet service provider, has never been leased by and for outsiders, same as the other private jets owned by them. Just imagine in the US or any other countries in the world, when the top leaders of that country and their family member have flight for over 800 times together with their private jet, at a cost of the several $100 million, do you think that is normal? During China's anti-corruption campaign, if anyone or any officials has a relation with such an airplane with such activities, he should have been taken into the custody. His name listed on this wall too. You see, this airplane has a record of 800 flights. We have a USB for each one of you here today, with the records and all the related information. These names appearing in the files, including Wang Jian, the top officials of the Chinese anti-corruption campaign in the past few years, and now Vice President of the People's Republic of China, and other important members of his family. Mr. Bannon has asked me for nearly 10 times to take down these photos here. Wang Jian here looks very much like a kind-hearted old grandfather at a happy gathering with his family's members on a Thanksgiving Day celebration. This looks not good for Bannon. Mr. Bannon and friends, this photo is just what we have wanted to put up here because Wang is wearing a mask. He has many faces. It is this old man who looks kind and friendly like a Santa Claus that has stolen my country, sent millions of Chinese into prison, and taken their freedom away. That's why I insist on putting up these photos here. Last night, about 10 o'clock, Mr. Bannon still advised me to take this photo away, but I insisted on putting it up here. Dear friends, when you see this, the information here can be found with the U.S. authorities. It is a private fund, funded in the 1890s, during the June 4th movement in China. It is clearly stated in the files that Yang Mingshan, wife of Wang Jian, and her elder sister's husband Sun Fengshan, other like Yao Qing, are all Wang Jian's family members. Under the name of the private fund, they owned many properties in the U.S., valued about $100 million. That happened in the 80s or 90s. Please imagine, under the Chinese anti-corruption campaign, if any officials is not able to explain the legitimate source of $100,000, he shall be put into the prison, and all his family members shall be taken into the police custody. Hundreds of the thousands of the Chinese naked officials whose family members have become the citizens or the residents of the foreign countries with assets overseas, not to mention overseas private funds, have been arrested, disappeared, or forced to confess their guilt on CCTV show. Officials with these wrongdoing would be sentenced by the different expression of crimes. But the family members of Wang Jian already owned a private fund during the 1989 students' movement. Dear attendant, I believe no one here, including Mr. Bannon, who once worked for Goldman Sachs, learned about the private fund 30 years ago. But Wang Jian's family had a private fund at that time, which I very much admire. This private fund can be sourced. Why the CCP of China has not taken any steps to trace it? Is it that they did not do anything or have known nothing about that? The anti-corruption campaign initiated by the President Xi Jinping and Wang Jian in 2012, all the way until today, have millions of the people arrested. Does Xi Jinping or Wang Jian learn about the private funds? Do they really not know or pretend not to know it? If we make a judgment of China's anti-corruption with reference to this case, this campaign is just a political movement. All the arrested peoples in the millions that should be treated in line with the judgment. Let's take another look at the photos of Wang Jian's family members who have a relation with the HNA group. Tian Huiyu, secretaries of Wang Jian, and Tian Guoli, Wang's adopted daughter Sun Yao, Wang Jian's Guan Jun, and the lady Guo Yanyan. Mr. Bannon has requested me not to mention these several names, as we stand by the rule of law in the land of the United States. And another name, Liu Chenjie. You see here, Wang Jian's family member and other related beneficiaries, and Mr. Liao Qing. What is their relation with HNA? How Wang Jian has been related to these people? Let's continue to the next page. The development of HNA Group from $1.5 million to $180 billion. How did they expand? In the past 3 years, 67 of the world's biggest acquisitions were done by HNA Group, covering all the sensitive industries in the world. All the acquisitions in these industries need approval from China's State Administration of Foreign Exchange, the National Development of Reform Commission, the Politburos, and the members of the Standing Committee. If they follow the rules and the application of all these 67 acquisitions, none of them shall have been made possible. None of them would get legal support from these government departments. Then why they have happened? When did the acquisition of the Deutsche Bank happen? When did the acquisitions of the Hilton Hotel happen? When did the acquisitions of the U.S. chip makers happen? The acquisitions in each of these industries have been labeled by the CCP as a strategic acquisition. This so-called strategic acquisition is nothing but stealing to counter the U.S. In the short period of the 1,000 days, they have completed 67 acquisitions, the first and only time in the human history. How many days to finalize the one acquisition? Take a look. Then, you see, in 2009, Mr. Wang Jian was the vice premier. In 2014, he became a standing member of the CCP Central Committee when he started the anti-corruption campaign. During the period, the asset of the HNA increased the skyrocket high. I want to ask the Wang Jian, now as a vice president of the Republic, who led the 90 million CCP members in an anti-corruption campaign, the increase of the HNA was so tremendous, almost $100 million per day. In 3 years, about 1,000 days, $100 billion. Why not for other companies in China? You have only stood for HNA, Xi Jinping, or Wang Jian. Did you learn about the development of HNA Group? Does it accord to Chinese law? Why Wu Xiaohui of Anbang, Yi Jianming, Liu Qiangzhong of the JD.com, and others, thousands of entrepreneurs, did not have the same fortune? In less 6 years, 1/6 of Chinese private enterprises have collapsed. Why only HNA has the fortune for rapid expansion of 250,000 times of increase, while others have failed? Dear attendees, please think, in human history, have you seen a company with its value increased several times in a single day? Before April 19th of 2017, when I conducted the interrupted interviews by Ms. Guo Xiaoxia of VOA, and before my whistle blows, no one on earth has questioned them. Why? No one has talked about that, and no one knows who Guan Jun or Liu Chenjie is. After the interrupted VOA interview, some significant things happened. Before 1993, HNA was 100% state-owned. In that year, it was changed to a private-owned company. Where is the approval? Do you have a contract for a deal? Is there any loss of the state-owned assets? In the past 6 years, lots of enterprises of the state or private companies were sent into the prison because of the loss of the state-owned assets. Their families broken were resulted in death. My question is, after the change of HNA into a private enterprises, The shares are 100% privately owned by the shareholders like Wang Jian and Liu Chenjie. Does this deal have a contract or transactions price? And I must also ask, the shares held by Wang Jian and Liu Chenjie were transferred to Cihang Foundation as a donation to the fund in U.S. Do they have a proof of approval from the State Administration of the Foreign Exchange? Or signatures of the standing members of the CCP Central Committees? Was the deal legitimate according to by the law of the foreign exchange management? Do they have approval of the contract or official document approval? Did they report to this Security Regulatory Commission? Both Wang Jian and Liu Chenjie have never taken part in the decision-making process of the HNA group. They never attended any of the HNA meeting. Their name have never been made public in China. Why? Shortly after the date of the April 19, 2017, with my interrupted VOA interview, their shares were donated to Cihang Foundation in New York. Do they have a contract for that donation? During the process, did they have any words or documents that must be submitted to the Security Regulatory Committees of Hong Kong, the U.S., and China in Beijing? Did they report the deal? We must ask this question. As a shareholder of HNA, the names of these two individuals, Wang Jian and Liu Chenjie, appear in the ownership documents of the HNA Group and other listed companies in China. Why the Chinese government knows nothing about this? Why the Chinese media knows nothing about this? Why only the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the Financial Times have known about this? Why Caixin magazines that often deliver the voice of the Wang Qishan and Xi Jinping has no coverage about them? We must ask, what is your relation with Wang Qishan? Has President Xi Jinping known anything of their activities? The officials who represent the supreme power in China or maybe in the whole world are Wang Qishan and Xi Jinping. Do they have any idea of what has happened in relation to this? If they don't know, why? If they have known, what have they done about this? Next on this page, we can see the relationships among these individuals. We must ask, what on earth has happened? Next, we come to the second chapter, the mysterious death of Wang Jian. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe The Voice of Go Media.